I think rules of thumb can be helpful for all of us as we're thinking about how much we need to save to retire, but they can also steer us a little bit or a lot in the wrong direction. And I don't want to see that happen to you, because the wrong direction means possibly you haven't saved enough money or you're working more years than you want to. So let's jump in. Fidelity's report is based on your salary. It's from a report that they call How Much Do I Need to Retire? And it's the savings factor. And it's based on your salary. So you can see here, Fidelity says when you're 30 years old, you should have 1 times your salary saved. When you're 40, they say you should have 3 times your salary saved. When you're 50, you should have 6 times. And then at 60, 8 times. And then finally, 10 times at 67. So somebody making $100,000 a year, Fidelity is saying by the time they're 67, they should have $100,000 saved. So let's jump in. What's wrong with this? I think the biggest thing is it's based on your salary. And we don't retire based on our salary. We retire based on what our living expenses are going to be and frankly, how long we're going to live and how we're invested. Those are the 3 main factors. So you could have 2 people in my example that are making $100,000 a year, and one person isn't saving a dime. And let's say the other person's a super saver, and they're saving 30, 40% of their salary. So they're spending quite a bit less. And let's say their plans are in retirement to spend half as much as the other person. Well, just common sense would tell you that those 2 people need very different amounts of money. And, I mentioned earlier about person making $100,000 a year. The sad fact is over half of all Americans making $100,000 a year aren't saving a dime. In fact, let's look at this data. This is from the Survey of Consumer Finance from the Wall Street Journal, and it says, how much do Americans have saved for retirement? Now, importantly, these are retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, things like that. And this is from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finance. You can see almost half of all Americans have $0 saved for retirement. And if we go all the way down to 50,000 and 900,000, if we take the aggregate of all of those, it's about 80% of people have less than $100,000 saved for retirement. And if that's the case, why are most of the people that we know that are retired at least living comfortably? So let's look at that. But before we go there, let's also, I think a fair critique of the retirement savings is to look at what the net worth is of Americans, right? Our assets are not just what's in our retirement accounts. Our assets are also, the value of our house is going to be a big one. So your net worth includes the value of all of your assets minus whatever you owe. So for most of us, that's going to be the value of our house if we own one, less the mortgage, less any car loans that we have, and less any credit card debt. And you can see here, let's just jump to people 55 to 64. You can see the median, which is different. Half the people have more, half the people have less. I'm using median because the average can be skewed by a couple high earners. But for 55 to 64-year-olds, the median net worth is $365,000. 65 to 74, which is when most Americans are going to first retire, is $410,000. And then 75 plus, you can see that number starts going down as people start spending some of their retirement assets. Now, for the average American, about half of our net worth is tied into our home. So you can see those 2 charts, retirement savings and net worth, kind of tied together nicely. So if that's the case, why do so many people that we know that are retired, why do they seem to have a fairly comfortable retirement? We all want more money. And for that, I want to turn to a Wall Street Journal opinion piece from April of 2024 by a gentleman by the name of Andrew Biggs. And Andrew's a serious player. I'll share a little bit more about him. And then I'm also going to share, if I don't like the Fidelity rule, again, what do I think is better to use? Okay, so Andrew's piece is called "You Don't Need to Be a Millionaire to Retire." Among seniors with 50 to 99,000 in savings, 86% reported doing okay or living comfortably, according to a Federal Reserve survey. And then he goes on, he explains, and we're going to talk about why he thinks that. But first, how much does a retiree need to feel financially secure? The Federal Reserve, in the median 65 to 70-year-old who reported doing okay or living comfortably, they had between $50,000 and $100,000 in savings. Now, am I saying you only need $50,000 to $100,000 to retire? I am absolutely not saying that. And this is not retirement advice. I don't know your situation. I want to share some of this information to put it on your radar screen so you can make the right decision for yourself. So in this same op-ed piece, Andrew Biggs goes on to say, why then do seniors report such high level of security with seemingly paltry levels of savings? One reason is that Social Security benefits are more generous than people think. This caught me by surprise, but I'm going to tell you about Andrew in a little bit. An average couple retiring in 2022 received a total annual benefits of nearly $46,000, and that's up from around $34,600, both adjusted. So they're in today's dollars. Okay. While hardly extravagant, a typical couple can expect an income more than twice the elderly poverty threshold level without touching a penny of their savings. So it surprises me that Social Security benefits have gone up by that amount. And also remember, this is two spouses. When two spouses are living, there's likely going to be a decrease when one of the spouses pass away. So we need to think about that. But here's a little bit about Andrew Biggs. He's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. But importantly, before joining AEI, he was a senior executive at the Social Security Administration, where he did studies on Social Security. So what does all this tell us? Well, let's look at just a little more data. This is from BlackRock, which is the country's largest custodian. And this talks about, do people spend the money that they have saved? So this article is called To Spend or Not Spend. And you can see in this chart here, basically it's how much money, percentage-wise, people had spent from their initial retirement balance in absolute dollars. So on the right-hand side, you can see these are the people that have 80 to 100% of the money that they retired with 17 to 18 years later. And then there's also a group that's greater than 100%. And BlackRock studied their lowest wealth people, their median wealth, and their highest wealth people. And what this shows is, about 10% of people that retired 17 to 18 years later have not spent any of their money. And another about 35, 40% still have 100% or more. Now, it's important, the stock market has been really strong during this period of time. Can you plan on that in the future? Unfortunately, probably not, but it does show that many of us are working longer and saving more than the amount of money that we're going to actually end up using. So what do I think is better? I'm going to give you the better and the best. So I think Fidelity's rule is good. I think it has a flaw, which is it's based on salary, not expenses. Better, I think, is using your expenses. Do a rigorous forecast of what you think you're going to spend in retirement. And I suggest that people actually try to live off of this amount for 6 months, 9 months before they retire to see if it's comfortable. But try to get a good sense of how much you're going to spend in retirement, importantly, including taxes, because taxes are one of the biggest expenses for a retiree. And then multiply that expense by 25. It's the same as using the 4% rule. I just think it's easier. If somebody has $1 million and they use the 4% rule that says they can spend $40,000 a year and have a high likelihood of not running out of money over 30 years. Well, if you take that same $40,000 and you multiply it by 25, it's going to give you $1 million, which is what I'm saying. Use 20 to 25 multiplied by your spending. Now, your spending's likely not going to stay constant throughout retirement. It's likely going to be higher. We call it a retirement smile because it looks like this. It's going to be higher when you initially retire and you're doing things like I'm doing. I'm recording this from Costa Rica today. But at some point, my traveling is going to slow down. I'm going to just enjoy hanging around my friends and family, which is fine. So spending tends to be high early in retirement, then it comes down, and then it goes back up. Now, it's important to factor in taxes, and it's also important to factor in healthcare costs that are not covered by Medicare, and also include your premiums. And Fidelity would say the average person at 65 years old needs to budget about $150,000 in total from the time they're 65 until the time they pass away. So that's a lot of money. And that's the problem with some of these rules of thumb. They're too simplistic. And so really you have two choices. The choice that I like is, and obviously I'm biased, I was a financial advisor for almost 22 years, but I think people should look for a fiduciary, a fee-only financial advisor that has your best interest in mind. And many people are going to say, hey, Azul, I'm just never going to do that. And if that's you, I urge you to use software that's developed for folks like yourself that aren't investment professionals, that haven't spent 20 years as a financial advisor. The software I like is called Bolden. It used to be called New Retirement. And it helps you think through things that you might otherwise forget, like your healthcare costs, like taxes are going to be a big factor, and how to think about where to spend your money first from which type of account, a regular IRA, a Roth IRA, etc. So it's very comprehensive. You can find a link to Bolden over here. This video is not sponsored by Bolden, but if you use the link, you'll be supporting the channel. Your price is the same, but you'll be supporting the channel. I get a little bit when people sign up for that. It's about $10 a month, so it's very affordable. And the other thing that's really important to think about is what types of accounts that you have, right? Looking back at the Fidelity rule, let's say you are that person that's making $100,000 a year and you're 67. Well, $1 million in a regular account is not the same thing as $1 million in an IRA, regular IRA that's going to be taxed on the way out, versus a Roth where, as the rules are today, you're not going to pay tax at that as long as you follow the rules when you take that money out. And then the third really important question is to think about, when is the right time for you to retire? And that's why I made this video up here. Why waiting to 65 to retire might be a big mistake. I look forward to seeing you in that video. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.